We want to welcome everybody here to this Building and Land Committee meeting, and we'd like to welcome everybody here and everybody that's not on the committee. We'd like to welcome you here and the additional commissioners. We'll call the meeting to order, and on the agenda, the first thing we have on the agenda is City of Cleveland proposal for 260 Inman Street, page 2 and 3. So what I'm going to do, the mayor has been in touch with the city, and they've been in touch with him. So I'm going to ask him if he would take over at this point and explain what they have come up with so far, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the benefit of those who may or may not know, discussions have been going on for a good 3 years now on this subject. And we've tried different options, I guess you would say. Early on, they were talking about buying a building, and on your behalf, my stand has always been we're willing to move as long as the cost is incurred by you, the city, because you're wanting the building. We're not looking to move. 3 years ago, that's what they were told. We could never come to an agreement on an amount to buy it because it never would meet the estimates that I've gotten. And I've gotten estimates twice, and both times they've gotten outdated because of the time lapse. But anyway, the amount they were wanting to pay versus the estimates I had to build the building we needed never matched. So my stand continued to be, I'm happy where I'm at. You pay for a move, in other words, another building or whatever. So we came back after that, and we looked at a building over by Beatty Hardware that city and county, fire department all toured and looked at, and it seemed to be doable. That deal fell through also. Then I came back with the idea that you've heard about on Inman Street on the other side of the underpass, and said this building and location and everything would work. Buy the building and swap with us. That went on for a year with them talking with Whirlpool and never could get an agreement. And finally, they said that's not going to fly. I don't know why, but between them and Whirlpool, it wouldn't fly. So they came back with an idea. Let us build your building for you on your property or possibly some city property, and see if that would work. So that's the letter that you have with you, is making that offer. I wanted to bring you up to speed on what we've talked about to date on that. And the only reason that I asked for a Building and Land Committee last week is I just want to know that the commission is okay with moving forward with the idea of them building a building and then swapping. If you're not, I don't want to waste another year or two on the project. If you are, there's still a lot to be done. We don't have anything before you today asking you to approve other than the idea. At some point, I'm asking you to authorize me to continue to negotiate with them and coming back with a contract that has everything spelled out in it. The letter didn't mention a lot of things that we do have verbal agreements on. And when I say verbal agreements, that's city manager and me, but nothing official on behalf of the city or county. But let me go through this packet that you have, or some of you have, and I just told Louis, we should have just done this at the work session instead of 11 of you having to come back at a special meeting. We had you all here Monday night. I could have done this then, but anyway, most of you have a copy of the packet. The first sheet is merely showing you what we propose to do. Now, people keep calling this a fire station. It is not a fire station. It's a garage housing fire department equipment, housing administrative people, as well as a training facility. That's basically what's down there now. But this building on South Lee Highway that probably everyone's been told to drive by if you want to, but I made a picture of it. It's a 6-bay building. You see 3 bay doors and they're drive-through. Now, a lot of people are going to want to compare to what we have now. What we have now is 5 bays and only 2 of them are drive-through. It's a makeshift building made into what you see today. you can't drive into any of those doors and drive out another door, which is the ideal situation for a fire-type building. So what we have been discussing with the city is we need a building that has 6 bay doors, 5 now that aren't back-to-back, 6 back-to-back. So 3 on the front, 3 on the back. That would house the $1 million ladder truck if we chose to put it there. The depth of the building being 80 foot, or it would house back-to-back equipment where each one equipment could go out each door, different directions. So a 6 bay door garage is what we've been looking at. And then also room for a training facility to replace what's on Inman Street, and then offices to replace administration at Inman Street. There's a lot more space at Inman Street, and even though every nick and cranny is being used, it's not the best shaped space, I guess you would say. But anyway, the first sheet is, if you drive down there, you'll see that's the look of the building that we're looking at. The second sheet talks about location, and most of this is from history and was with previous chiefs, but the assistant chief was somewhat involved back then. We looked at property we owned to get an estimate on building a building on our property. Basically, we had 3 locations: Dooley Street, Dalton Pike, or Menace Road. Everyone involved during that time agreed that Menace Road was the best location of the 3. Their letter mentions Dooley Street, but that was just a hypothetical. It could work here. Because of the shape of the lot, the lay of the land, and between 2 existing buildings that are very much used, and the fact that parking has already been being used for the health department, it really has no frontage unless you take away parking. And what we will eventually need to be doing at the health department is adding, not taking away. So I didn't want to use Dooley Street because of future growth. Talk about keeping land and not selling it. Future growth of the health department. They've grown dramatically in the recent years and will continue to grow, I believe, mostly with help from state, by the way. So that put us back at Menace Road. If you look on a map, it's more centrally located than anything else anyway. We have, according to this drawing, roughly 180 foot from corner of the building to corner of the lot. And what we're proposing is a 110-foot building with setbacks, leaves you 40 to 50 feet for a drive-through between the 2 buildings. That just shows you that it would work, and then we would go back and match the other building as far as depth back into the depth of that lot. So that lot would work if that was the decision made. Then the third sheet gives you a little more detail of what we're looking at, and it keeps getting called the fire station, but again, it's a fire garage with a training facility and administration, the chief, chief operations chief offices. That third sheet shows you hypothetically how that size building would work. You've got space on one end of the building for the offices and the training room. You've got 3 14-foot doors, 18-foot high building, by the way, so we can have 16-foot roll-ups, which works. That's what's needed for a fire truck. And then a 30 by 80 foot on the other end for what I perceive as being cage storage. A lot of equipment that's not used on a regular basis could be stored in there in addition to the bays. So that just gives you an idea of what we've been having discussions with. Roughly an 80 foot by 110 by 18 foot high with 16-foot doors. Some of the other things not mentioned in the letter that are in the verbal agreement is they would build this building. It didn't mention, but it would include the plumbing, the HVAC, the electrical. I started getting questions about that. Why it wasn't in the letter, I don't know, but all of these things would be in the contract that would come back to you at some point. But HVAC, electrical, plumbing. So you would have electrical for lighting, for the training room, for the offices. You would have plumbing for the bathrooms. You would have HVAC for the entire building, and it would also include concrete driveway and concrete pad for the building. All of the estimates that we got, most of them was for the building set on an existing concrete pad. So that all of that would be included in the agreement that we bring back to you at some point. I think that brings you up to speed of where we're at today. And now I'll be happy to try to answer questions, but keep in mind, we're not asking for approval of any project. What I'm asking for is, are you interested in them building us a building on our property and authorizing me to proceed? For example, if you said, no, we don't want them building us a building, then tell me so I don't waste more time with it. If you want to proceed with it, then you're not approving anything other than authorizing me to proceed. And at some point, there's no hurry. This has been going on for 3 years, but finally the city's getting to a point where they're ready to start moving a little better. More than likely, we're looking at, if we use their letter as a guide, their letter says we would begin within 8 months, which is perfect because that puts us in the summer months to do the work. And then it would probably be a 2 or 3 month construction period. So we're talking a year out. So there's no hurry, but I would like to know if you want us to continue working with the city to put something together to have a contract to bring back to you at some point in the next couple of months, probably. Questions? Howard, he's got one over there.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mayor, the plumbing, electrical, HVAC, is that just the rough end, or is that also the set out? Will they be providing all the lights and the toilets and the faucets and all that, or?
One thing I didn't mention, in their letter, they mention we build the building, put the electrical in it like you're implying there, and you do the inside finishing and we allow you. That has not been addressed fully yet. My comments back to them was, if you want me to do the interior, then I've got to go get estimates of what that will cost. I don't know if this hypothetical number you put in the letter would cover that. Don't think it would.
No.
But that hasn't been addressed. Either they will provide those things that you just asked, the finished, or they'll, if they stick with what they're saying now and we'll give you money and you finish it, then I'm going to have to go get estimates of that cost, and I would go back to them and say, okay, but here's what the interior finish costs, and they would have to agree to pay that amount. Does that make sense?
It does.
I don't know which way we would be going on that.
And listening to the city council meetings and hearing city manager speak, to me it sounded like when they were talking at the city that it was, they build the shell and then we build out the inside.
That is what they said in the letter also. And the reason they proposed it that way is they can get a package deal on the building only.
Yeah.
And usually that package deal will include rough-in electrical, wiring, HVAC, and plumbing, and stop, give us money to finish it. If they stick with that idea, that's fine, except I'm going to need to know what that amount should be. Or they may decide to go ahead and, based on the square footage, do it too. I don't know that, but it'll be one or the other, and that would be spelled out in whatever we come back to you with.
My one more question that I have currently is, the current building that we're in, is it, correct me if I'm wrong, is it around 12,000 square feet? Is the building that we're 14? So about 15,000 square feet. And then this one that's being projected is
88.
88. So we're basically going to a half of the size of the building. Will this building here, is this one-story building, or is it a two-story building, or?
One story, you could do what we've done down there and put steps in it and go up 18-foot, high building.
Yeah.
Which is what's been done down there. You have a building down there that was not built for what we're using it for, and we've made do with it by adding things like the upstairs and everything. But again, you got a bay door where you can back a truck in, but that's the only truck that can use that bay door. No drive-throughs, only one drive-through, and we had to put that in. More square footage, but not shaped and designed to work for what we use it for. It's the square footage that we got when we bought the building many years ago, and we've made it work. And give you a history there, we went to that building for the very first fire station because when we began a paid department, we only had one fire station. And I had questions every day. Why do you have the one county fire station in the middle of the city of Cleveland? Because with one station, we needed it to be centrally located to go in every direction. And that was the best location we had. But that's not the issue with the garage. It doesn't have to be located for the
Sure.
same reasons there. But that building was available, it was centrally located, and we made it into our very first fire station. Since then, we've built the others, and all the firemen are located somewhere else except for the administration.
And sorry, one more follow up. And I understand you still have to work on the agreement and all that kind of stuff. But if that is something, if we want to make changes to that building to where we say in the administrative side and all that, we would like to see a second level to where the training room is upstairs and, you know, the offices are down or whatever it might be to give more space. Is that something that the city and your conversations with them are agreeable to making changes to it? Or because I think they're buying kind of I hate to say a cookie cutter box building, but they're basically buying a cookie cutter box building, putting it up, and then that's it. I mean, are we able to make those changes ourselves on the inside?
Well, so far you can. We would be, if it was the desire of the commission to go back with them with that, what you just explained, for example, that's what we would go back for. I don't know how much of that we can get agreed to.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure what we're proposing here, we can get agreed to. Keeping in mind, he hasn't gotten city council approval and details on anything, and neither have I. It's merely been at the negotiations. But again, we're both to the point where we can continue to iron out those kind of things if you so choose.
Thank you. That's all I have for right now.
Mike,
Chester, I have a quick question for you. It's one I'm curious about. Your training room and the office spaces there, how much room is that? Square footage wise? Just training room and the upstairs training or the office space?
So the training room in this, and again, at this point is very undetailed, but you have a possible, instead of 1,200 square foot training room, up to 19. So we may choose, for example, to leave it at 12, and you got 700 more feet for an office. I was just giving the idea so you could see in your mind what we're talking about. We're not cutting the size of the training room if you left it like it is right now, but you could lower the amount and end up with comparable, if you wanted to keep it divided like it is now. You have a possibility of a 1,900-foot training room. I don't know that they would need that, so you could add another office or two if you wanted to instead of. You see what I'm saying? We're just talking about stud walls here. So dividing those walls, how we decide to, won't really affect the overall agreement that much. A stud wall, a little bit of wiring and a stud wall is all we're talking about interior-wise.
any more questions for the mayor?
Oh, I had
I think we-
My other question is that if I'm doing math right with what sizes you gave a second ago, being 3,500 square feet basically just for office and training, that leaves 11,000 in the building that we have now. And I've been in that building. I know the fire committee has also. It's packed from one end to the other with equipment. And would you be able to fit it in? Right, what, say 2,000, make it easy, to a 6,000 square foot building, because that's what you're going to have left after you put storage or put your office and training, and I know it's a little bit more than that, but that's roughly it. And the other question is Mayor, are we willing, if it doesn't fit, are we willing to add on to this building or the city add on to it to make it bigger, or us building another building just fit the rest of the stuff in?
Well, that would be up to you all. I don't want to get into any arguments on anything. Just because you have 9,000 square feet of office space that may or may not be used properly today doesn't mean you need 3,000 square feet of office space. For example, the first room you walk into, what do you see? You ever saw anybody sitting in there? So we could go room by room, but I don't wanna go there. We're not to that point at this time. We'll be able to divide the interior up however I would hope you leave it to us and the fire department to propose, but, the important thing is we don't wanna cut the training room too small. This doesn't do it, and if you leave it the same, then you add a 700 more. You've already got 2,400 square foot storage. You add another 700 to it, you're over 3,000 feet of cage storage. Better utilized space with drive-through bays. You gained a bay door that you don't have now, and they're shaped right instead of hodgepodged in all kinds of directions. So, you know, it could be argued both ways on all that. Are we willing to add on later? Probably. I don't think at the end of the day, if we design the interior right, we would need to. But it's also like, uh, I'd hate to be quoted like this, but you could probably sell your house and build a smaller house, get rid of all the junk, and live just fine in that smaller house. Uh, it's new versus the old one. I live in an old house, and I know I could live in a much smaller new house and be better off. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a new building versus a very, very old building that is shaped more efficiently, and then maybe some things need to go to the yard sale. But, and some has, and he's in the process of some more doing just that. So I'm not wanting to cut us short, but I think it's just better utilization of a little bit less space is what we're talking about.
Mayor, when you say cage storage, just for clarification for me, you're talking about setting a cage outside and storing the equipment outside. Is that correct, or am I
No.
misunderstanding?
In that one end, for example, the 30 by 80, that's a pretty big space. But I think the chief would tell you this, that kind of equipment that's not used daily, you would put what I'm calling cage wire so that I don't mean to sound negative, but it can't be carried off on a daily basis. Does that make sense? It's locked up until it's needed. Yeah, it's internal. I didn't put
Okay, that's
anything
what I'm trying to
outside.
figure.
The only thing outside on this building is landscaping and concrete. Um, so you understand what I'm saying? You can't just put equipment in there. By the way, most of it is now, but you can't just put equipment in a building, equipment that's very rarely used, and expect it to always be there without taking some precautions otherwise. Did I fairly describe that right, Chief? So that's why I'm referring to it as caged storage area.
Any more questions?
And again, these details are great questions, and I don't mind the questions, but just please keep in mind, we're not asking you to approve a design or anything, just to move forward, and the input of, I don't know if they can get a bigger building, but if your input was, no, we want it instead of 8,800, we want it to be 17,000, then that's what you need to say. If you want to kill the idea, say that. I'd rather you just vote we don't want to proceed. But please think of it as a proposed new building in a good location that's designed properly, somewhat smaller, but I think it would work, but we're not approving any of those details at this point. But the input that you want to put in the further negotiations is fine. At the end of the day, come the 16th of October, I just hope to have authorizations to either move forward or not move forward with something.
Louis?
Yes, several questions and comments. One is, I'm not worried about the building. I'm looking at the price. They offering a $415,000 building. And if you'll look at our building, I mean, it's worth a lot more than that. Stanley, the old Moore building, for example, I think Stanley had the old Moore building rated at $1,041,000. And it's only 8,000 square feet. So when you look at what was done with the Moore building, which not what is HHM or MMH or whatever it is now, you can't find what the city paid for that building or what they got for that building until you really dig into the deeds and everything, which was donated. Then city paid $1 for the building. Then later on, that company borrowed $1.5 million on the building. So I think we're underrating the cost or what our building's worth. It's twice as big as what they're offering for what Stanley says is $1.4 million just for the Moore building. That was half of what we got. So I think we're really underpricing what our building might be worth. Now, if we want to build a new building, my suggestion is throw an average out there, offer $1 million, $1.5 million, and see if the city wants to give us $1 million, $1.5 million for our building, and we'll build our own building. That's the way I look at it. And go back to the Menace Road property. It's a great piece of property, but I just don't know the accessibility of our big trucks and things being able to get off that road, Menace Road, and get anywhere on the west side or the north side of Bradley County with that big ladder truck and other heavy equipment. I mean, I'm not condemning, if you want to build a building there, that's fine. But I just have problems with the access of it. Now, I'm not for selling the building at all, but if they won't pay us a good price for it, a fair price, they said, $400 and something thousand for buildings. That's some of those across the street probably. But that building's worth a heck of a lot more than what they're offering to do for us. So my suggestion is that we look at upping the price that we're willing to take, and then we'll go from there. But I hadn't heard from the chief on any of this property. I know Mylan put together a heck of a list. 8,000 square feet building, I don't know that y'all can get your stuff in there. Let's be honest. You can't, can you? That'd be really hard, wouldn't it?
Chief, you don't come up and just talk to us.
Some of the equipment that we have in there, it's for all of the 13 stations, such as, like Mayor said, we have rooms that's for all of our hose for the entire department has to go there. All of our foam, we house about 100 pails of 5-gallon pails of foam, which is 100 of them. And then, of course, our tools. And a lot of our maintenance comes to that building to be maintained, oil changes and services and things like that. So we house all of the maintenance equipment in one building as well. So then we have light plants and boats and things like that. There's a lot in there. We are looking at getting rid of a few pieces of equipment. So from age.
So if you move out there, if we did it on Menace Road, you'd still do your maintenance there, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you recommend a pit there for those trucks or something to do maintenance on, change oil and stuff?
I mean, as long as we have one bay area so we can change and maintenance. Yeah. We also got to remember we have some trucks that might be down for weeks due to large mechanic problems or you're waiting on parts. We're waiting on parts a lot. So sometimes that truck might be and take that entire bay, and we can't put it outside due to the water. So little things like that. And then we're needing also about parking. We have to consider parking because, again, EMS uses the building with training and us, and we're looking at 18, roughly about 25 parking spots to 30. So take.
There's one other thing I wanted to mention. That is a storm shelter out there also. A storm shelter. That is a storm
Menace,
shelter.
Yes.
And I was there the other day, and they were mentioning parking. We do have some more property there that could be developed into more parking on the south side, I guess, of it. And there's one area in the back there that could be fixed for parking, but we are limited on parking out there when it comes to the storm shelter. If we got a tornado coming and people go out there, why there's not enough parking. I understand that. So I just wanted to mention that. Josh?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, your best guess, what, with the equipment that you're getting rid of and that you're trying to minimize and all that, what size building do you guys need? I mean, because we always talk about growth too, right? I mean, our fire department's not getting smaller. I mean, we're having more and more people come in here and live in here, and that means more, more hoses, more equipment, more different things for your fire department and for your firefighters? What, I mean, is it, you said 8,000 is not a suitable size building. You know, what would be a suitable size building? In bay doors, you know, there's 6 in this proposal or in this, you know, rendering here, 3 on both sides. You know, do you need 10 bay doors? Do you need 12 bay doors? I mean, just so we're kind of have the understanding. You know, unlike Commissioner Alford, I agree. I mean, I think that building down there is way more valuable to the city than it is, you know, than what they're offering. You know, I don't mind them building us a building or buying that building and us building our own. But I mean, for us to be able to sit here and say, yeah, Mayor, proceed and keep going. I mean, I kind of would love to know personally what, you know, what you guys need to make sure that it's right, you know?
I'd love to have a lot bigger size than I got. I will say that. But it is. I'm with Mayor on one thing. Is, you know, we go to mutual aid meetings and you see other departments. We do that monthly, and I got a point when I get to this. And we see other buildings. Some are huge, and it is how well it is spaced out. I've seen some that's 11,200 in North Carolina that we went to just a few months ago, and it was huge. His office space, it was the way it was laid out, and he said he could have went up the second floor and had double that. But you wouldn't have thought that with 11,000 square foot building. So I just want to make sure that we don't shortchange ourselves, you know, with that equipment. Right now, we do have to pull things out. Yesterday, we had a 6-acre brush fire on Chilcutt. I had to move 2 to 3 pieces of equipment just to get to the UTVs, just to make sure that I could get out to those before it got all the way out to that wood line on Chilcutt. So it is timing. A lot of things are based off on timing, but it's rough. It's hard for me to say. As long as we got the room to make sure we need to do what we need to do, I'm not against anything. I just want to make sure we got the room.
Can we put things into the minutes? Commissioner Blake left this Bradley County Fire Rescue Station 8, and it has a listing of all the things that are in there. I'm sure this was provided to him by somebody at the fire department. If we could put this in the minutes so we could see that, and then also, if there's no objection, and then also the packet that the mayor handed out as well, and that way it can be kept, and when we look back on this, we'd have all that together, if you don't mind, Ms. Moultrie, if there's no objections, Mr. Chairman.
Bill?
Within my questions have to do. I agree with Commissioner Alford that maybe this is a low bid and just starting the process. The question I've always had is how valuable is having our fire station, training station, what station it all is, in the downtown area versus moving out. I always wondered why we were there, and I now know, as you shared many times, that you could get so many directions that way and get to a fire quicker, and you could get to the city quicker, which is who 3rd District and 7th District represent a lot. So the value of that versus moving out, I guess the moving out still weighs more than that, Mr. Mayor. That's what we're saying at this point.
If I could, I appreciate it. Again, when we first did the one station,
right,
the detriment or the negative to them was no matter which direction we went, we had to go through city traffic.
Yeah.
And that was bad. But again, we were located where we could go in either direction. Now, we're not doing that on a normal day. Now, I'll give you an example. On the bypass, I can go east, south, and north, maybe not west, but I would argue that by bypass, I can even go west as quick or quicker than centrally located. But look at what's really happening. They're all at they're all at Inman Street today training. They're not all there, but a majority of them are at the Inman Street training today. I have a fire on my end of the town, and they're all downtown Cleveland. They got to go through all that downtown traffic, all the way up Key Street to get to that fire. There's not a perfect location, but a bypass location is probably better. At least it's as good, probably better, according to where you're at. So, yeah, the purpose has changed now. They're not leaving there, the commander is, but fire trucks aren't leaving there going to emergency fire calls. on a regular basis. The ladder truck helps with ISO and is needed from time to time, but isn't going out on a fire call daily or weekly or probably even monthly. So it's a place for it to sit and be stored and ready for when it comes. The boats they couldn't get to, that's the better utilization of space I'm talking about. It wouldn't be in a more better designed building. There's space there for that boat, but you can't get to it without moving 3 other vehicles today. That's what they deal with on a day, not a daily, but whenever they're needed, whether it be boats or the side by sides or whatever. The square footage not utilized, not doesn't make it readily available isn't necessarily a good thing. One other thing, because all I'm wanting to do is hear the discussion if you decide to proceed. They're not offering that 415. They went through all that rhetoric about what they consider the average price of a building is. I can tell you my estimate on this proposed is nowhere near that amount. And I couldn't get there with, you give us this and we'll go build it. It wasn't nowhere near there. And I got estimates from 3 different metal building companies locally. So don't worry about what's in that letter on the average price of a building. That may be what that old building is averaged at, but I don't care what it's averaged at. I was wanting the amount of money it would take to build somewhere, and we could never get there. If they build for us and they can do it less than my 3 estimates, more power to them, but my estimates aren't near that, I can tell you that.
Are they higher or lower?
Much higher.
Much higher?
Yes.
Why was the negotiation with the city and Whirlpool negative, that Whirlpool decided?
You would
Was it
have to,
Whirlpool?
you would have to ask them, but I can, as I would check back over the last long period of time, what's the latest on Whirlpool? We think we're gonna get something Friday. We think we're gonna get something, I don't know.
Do we know how much land that was? How much land is there?
It was actually a bigger lot than we needed, but it would have been great. And it's sitting there unused.
Yeah.
When I say Whirlpool, as you know, technically it's in that other entity, but I don't see a nickel's difference between them myself. But they obviously are very tough to deal with. I haven't dealt with them, so I'm not saying that. I just know I kept getting the wrong answers back over months and months and months.
I think the price that they're saying at this point is still too low, so the city would need to bring that up as
Oh, yeah.
the commissioner offered.
And again, if with the building, that's my point. We're not taking that amount of money. We're saying you build this building, and if you got somebody that's going to do it with 50 cents on the dollar, most people will give you a square footage price. I understand that, and tell you what it includes. But and some of you will, so go ahead and call a Cherokee Construction and see what square foot price you get from them, and it won't be near that amount.
Final question I have is in building the new building that we would need to do, could we not look at the city doing a lock and key thing with that, where whatever's required to be inside would be figured in with whatever there's an increase in what their bid is for this property, adding that into it, and then all we do is with your leadership and the commission and the men in the room is what we need in that building and how it needs to be set up, and then it's built within the price there.
And that's what I was referring to earlier. It could go either way. That part's not been decided. They proposed, we give you money, you do it. Unless I had estimates, I would have to get.
Right.
The lock and key would be the easier for me, of course. That would mean more diligence up front because we'd have to have more details spelled out in the contract if we want this, these things. But that can be either way. Either way, that's going to come back. If they agree to lock and key, then we'll bring back the design of that lock and key at some point. If they stay stuck on, we're going to build you the building, the pad, not and the parking and all that. And by the way, the amount of parking for a safe room was not designed by Gary Davis. It was designed by FEMA, who paid for the dadgum building, and that's how many parking spaces they said it needed. So I didn't create those number of parking spaces. But if they stay, we would rather just do the building and you do the interior, then we'll have to go get estimates based on what you want for the interior, and they would have to agree to fund that amount. So there's a lot of ifs on that question yet.
Finally, obviously, this is more advantageous for the city than for the county at this point. We can function if we need to upgrade this.
I'm okay
So
where
we-
I'm at. We do have some
yeah,
issues to
yeah.
deal with, as you all know. You've brought that to the public's attention in the last few months. I didn't want to because negotiating, it's hard to negotiate when you're throwing out all your negatives. But we do have some issues. But again, my attitude's always been, I'm okay to stay right there. I'm also, after 3 years of this talk going on, I'm okay to move and be out of it. I'm tired of it. But it's not us wanting to move. That location works okay. There's pros and cons to wherever you go, but it works okay. And with some expenditures, we could stay right there for the use that it's at now and be okay.
Mayor, a few questions, actually. One, is the size that they're giving here, is that set in stone? Or would they be willing to go up in size?
Would they be willing to, what was the last
Go
question?
up in size,
I would say
just
it's definitely not set in stone. Everything's just been verbal to this point. Our shape versus what's in their letter has been agreed to because their shape didn't work. I don't know where they got those numbers, but nothing's in stone. If it was the decision to proceed, but it would have to be reasonable or we're killing negotiations. You know what I'm saying? So I would ask, if you want to proceed, it be reasonable. But again, 1,000 square feet misshaped equipment you can't get to, or 1,000 square feet that is shaped right, is two different things. You can't compare 1,000 to 1,000, and that's what we're saying here. Early on, we looked at how it should be shaped, the depth. I didn't create the depth. That came from somebody in the fire industry. So the depth and all was determined. Could it go longer? Keep in mind, we would be off of that site if it went much longer, but it could be, it's not in stone. That site would probably allow another 10 feet, so it could possibly be 120, because then you're going to get into, we're infringing on the setbacks and the driveway. You've got to have a driveway going through there. But the easy answer to your question is no, nothing's in stone at this point.
which, just to throw a number out, the chief said something about 11,000 square feet, so.
And you
Just-
keep saying versus 8 when it's really 9.
Mhm.
If you went another 10 feet, that's 80 times 120. That's how many square feet? Do that real quick, somebody. Did anybody do it? 120 times 80. You can easily go deeper with the building. How much? So now you're at almost 10,000 square foot building. You could easily go deeper as far as the lot's concerned. That doesn't benefit a whole lot. I guess you could store equipment between two trucks that are going out two different directions, but the 80 foot's what's needed for two fire trucks back to back, or the ladder. So you could go deeper but keep in mind, that's when your square footage changes a lot, when you go to a bigger span. So 100 foot by 100 foot is probably a lot more costly than a 80 by 100 foot. Does that make sense? The metal spans are what determines that. And 80 was what was agreed was fairly much what we needed. So longer, 80 by 120 when you're at 10,000 square feet is probably the only thing that would work on that site. But we do have plenty of depth for parking. If you want to go back and dig into the bank, either behind where they're at now, because they're not using, half of that depth, I believe, for parking. So they could easily go deeper, and then we could also go deeper on the extension part of it. That's not an issue at all with that location. Only thing I think would be we'd be limited to how long we could go with the building and still fit it on that site. Not that it has to go there. As far as sites, they mentioned in the letter we might have some other sites. I'm not interested in continuing to consider Whirlpool sites because we'd be talking about it 3 more years from now probably. But they may come back. We also have a site here and a site here. That's still possible. And those sites might be better than this even. So sites nothing's in stone. Based on what I know today, this is probably the recommended site, but there could be other sites that come to the top and we would look at too. I'm talking in circles a lot, but just please understand, nothing's in stone, and we've got a lot more work to do, but at least we're narrowing it into this route versus the three that we've looked at over the last 3 years.
If you kept it at 80 foot wide and 137 it'd be 10,960. So right there at 11.
Yeah,
That was
as
square
long
feet.
as we keep the setback and the driveway
Um,
between there.
I'm somewhat in agreement with you on just staying where we're at, honestly, because I'm thinking that especially we have to finish out the inside. It just finishing out the inside, we could fix our own building for that and still have, and at least know what we've got.
Well,
Now,
the
I
only
agree
way
with
we
you,
would
it's a
agree
new-
is if we finish the inside, there is an amount of money allotted for us to do that. And that would be based on getting an estimate of once we know what we want to do. They threw out a number just to get you with the idea. You finish it, we'll give you this number. I don't think that number works. But once we get an estimate on what the finish cost would be, then they would have to agree to that amount of money. Does that make sense? And I don't know which way they would rather go on that. That's one of the unknowns still there. I don't know if they're going to stay with the idea, we'll give you money, you finish it the way you want it, then that tells me to go get estimates on what that cost is, or they may want to put it all in the package deal that Commissioner Winters mentioned.
And I truly believe the building that they're proposing size right now, although getting rid of stuff, you're correct on that. We could get rid of some stuff. Unfortunately, what I think is also don't want them cramped in so tight that they can't get to the equipment that they need to get to. That's my biggest fear is that all of a sudden you need something and it's one of those things you have to have right then. Then you have to dig to it and never get to what you're looking for. And then, God forbid, whatever's happened.
Okay, any more questions? It's, okay, looks like, yeah, Louis, go ahead.
Mayor mentioned there a minute ago that 40,000. He said he'd gotten some higher prices. Would you mind giving us an idea of those higher prices? You don't hold you to it, but I'm looking at probably $5 or $6 million building.
No. I'll put it this way. If you checked with the company I mentioned earlier, they'll probably give you, we could do that building and they'll give you a square foot price. $100 to $150 a square foot, I think was what they gave. And they're usually on the upper end of estimates. And that's what they gave some time back. Nothing is new because I haven't gotten new ones yet. So you're talking about $1 million building. I don't know what they can build it for, and I don't care if they build it, but I'm telling you, our estimates were closer to that.
Goes back, why are we asking them to build us a building? Let's give them a price. We'll take this amount for our building, and we'll build our own building. I don't understand why we're asking the city to build us a building. Why don't we give them a price of whatever y'all decide, the board decides that building's worth, and take it to the city and say, this is what we'll take, this is what we're gonna get. If not, we'll stay right where we're at. We're not wanting to move. We're not wanting to sell. They want to buy our piece of property, so we give them a price, and if they're willing to pay that price, then we build our own building. Then we don't have to do all this negotiating and hee-hawing around about what they're going to put in, what they're not going to put in, and so forth and so forth and so on. We do our own thing and go from there.
If I could interrupt, then I don't mean to interrupt, but if I could, on that subject, keep in mind, at first, I went and got a square foot price to build a building, and I could not get an agreement to buy our building for that. They keep wanting to talk about the value of our building. I said, I don't care what our building is worth. Here's what I need to move. And that didn't go anywhere. So if you're wanting to kill it, then vote to do that, and that tells me what to do, and I'll gladly do it. But I'm just telling you, we've already been there, and it didn't go anywhere. So they're the ones, I'm not asking city to do anything, they're the ones that came back and made this counter offer.
Don't it?
Yes, I agree with Louis about the price, and I agree with you about the building. So why not let them build a building and give us boot?
Say that last part again.
I agree with what you're saying about them building the building, and I agree with Louis about the price of our building. So why don't we let them build our building out and give us boot the difference of what we need? So if we want $1 million for our building, it's costing 200 or what they say, 400 and something thousand to build it, 500,000, then give us 500 boot.
Well, like I said, my estimates are double what you keep quoting from that letter. I don't know why that number's in that letter. It's telling you the average cost of building sold recently was that.
So they said that they could build this building for that, right?
No, they didn't. They
No.
said
Oh,
this
okay.
is what the average
That's where
building
everybody's
said.
getting it wrong.
Read that letter again. That sentence says the average of these 3 purchase price comparisons on Inman Street is that. They're not talking, if you based on comparisons, and a lot of people, you've got one sitting over there, they look at comps. So they're saying based on comps, but that's not what they're offering. Then they turn around and say, we're willing to build you a building. They can't build the building based on the estimates I've got for anywhere close to that number.
No.
My estimates are not there.
So what you're telling them is build us a building comparable, and we'll trade.
Build us a building that we agree to, no matter what it costs, is what they're offering to do. The only thing is we don't have an exact agreement on that building yet, but close.
Okay, understand that.
If I'm figuring right, or what I'm guesstimating, I'm around constructions a little bit, but I'm figuring it's gonna cost to build a building like that about $200 a square foot. So if you look at a 12,000 square foot building, that's $2.4 million that it would cost to build. And I don't even know if that's finishing it out. So,
Have any more questions, Josh?
Thank you. Mayor, you mentioned that this Menace Road property. Are there any other properties that you're thinking about? I know you said you're done with Whirlpool and trying to do anything like that, but are there any other properties that this building could go to? Because, and I totally get APD 40, but my question is about response times. We had a 6-acre brush fire the other day, and they needed to take those ATVs out there. And if it's across town, how much more from being out from downtown, and where we're at, where we're kind of centrally located, would those response times be? If there is property damage or if there is life that is, where they need to get to up north with this 100-foot ladder truck. I mean, that's my only concern. Is there any other centrally located or downtown or inside the city area for a building to go? And then I have another comment after that as well. Or is that the only location that we're considering?
The 3 locations we've looked at, as I said, have been Dooley, which sort of fits your characterization, and Dalton Pike. I guess you could add the 40 acres of unused property that hadn't been used in the last 40 years on the railroad as another location. So that could be 4. Cost prohibitive to even make a fire station there, though. But again, it's not a fire station. That's not saying they don't ever go out of their emergency. But your normal fire calls don't come off of Inman Street. And I can only use me as an example. I can get from Menace Road to my house quicker than I can from Inman Street to my house because of the traffic on Keith Street and Ocoee Street. So you got to look at traffic, not just on a map. But on a map, it's fairly centrally located, and when you put the bypass into the picture, it becomes even more so. The biggest problem that we have with fire response times is the west side, because, and that's a plus for Inman Street, straight west. You can't get there. That's why we put a 2-man paid station out there for response time. But how many times has a ladder truck left emergency? In the last 2 years, how many times has it left emergency? Okay. My only point is it's not that we don't need it, but it's not going emergency traffic. There's not often that need. The biggest need is probably on the north side because of industry, but it doesn't fit in the, if I'm saying it wrong, Chief, it doesn't fit in the Fish Creek Station very well without getting rid of a tanker. Is that correct? That would be the ideal location for it because that's where your tall buildings are at. Not to say that's the only right thing you use it for. I don't mean that at all. People take me out of context. But that's what you tend to think of it being. But anyway, back to your question, those three locations are the three we've looked at. And again, there might be a fourth or fifth location that comes back from the city in their proposal because they do have some city possibilities. I don't know what those are yet. He said he would work on those and see what he had, and, you know, they may be something that you like better. Again, that's not in stone either. It's just, like I said before, the best we have today is this location, in my opinion. Dalton Pike is a flat piece of land, by the way, but fire officials said they would rather be responding from Menace Road with its proximity to the bypass versus Dalton Pike. So,
Thanks. My final thing that I have is I agree with Commissioner Alford about selling that building and building our own building, but I also agree with staying in this building, you know, that we're currently at and you know, renovating it and getting it up to where it needs to be and seeing if there's any expansion that we could have for some of these items where we could put those in other fire locations or where other places are possibly. But I'm also am okay as well in selling this building to the city and letting them do that. I just don't want us to end the negotiation and just stop and just say, you know, we're not going to let you build the building when we don't have all the information and all the data. And my kind of request would be for the mayor to give us an idea of what it would cost to build it, you know, if we built our own, and that's what we would sell the building to the city for. We kind of understand already if they would do a lock and key, if they would do that with us. But then also, what is the cost of the renovations that would be needed for the building that we're currently in? I mean, I think the building that we're currently in works great for us. I think that it's mentioned in their letter that we need a new roof. That's why they're giving us only $286,000 and saying that it's not even worth that because the roof needs to be replaced, structural damage, parking lot repairs, all these other items that, you know, makes our building sound horrible and doesn't paint their pretty picture for Inman Street and all these downtown revitalization that they want to do. And to be honest with you, I'd love to be able to see a pretty nice fire hall that says Bradley County on the side of it and all their pretty pictures of Inman Street when they get these roads down, just to be honest with you. So for me, if we could do that and just continue this conversation with the city and in negotiation, but also at the same time, figure out what it costs to fix it, what it costs to build our own, and just continue to go from there and reconvene this, you know, joint session down the road and you know, in the next couple weeks or however long it takes to get that. Cause I mean, and I know it's not a fire hall, but moving an operations command post and center where we have everything. It is, I mean, at the end of the day, it is a fire hall. There's a truck there that can be made calls from there. And these guys work there all day long. You know, to move all that to a new place would just be treacherous when we could fix up what we've got and make it pretty and have those pretty pictures on Inman Street. So,
Bill.
Just one question on Menace Road. It was brought up about the roads there. They are narrow. You got big equipment going in and out of that. My sister used to live on what would be the west side of Menace there, and I do know how tight that is. You got the big equipment there. Something would have to happen on Menace Road because you got a recreation center right across from you. You got a ball field and all that stuff. And when you all need to get out and you got a narrow road, you got cars parked all through to the ball play. And I guess that maybe even expanded over there. There'd have to be something, you know, either a fire lane, so to speak, that could be put in there so you could get out to the main highways. That's just something to look at. Finally, my word here is just I appreciate your work, Mayor. I think this is good work. This is meaningful work to process. You got enough information here. We need to work out what's best for the county, what's best for the city. And that's where you got to get together one more time and put the pencil to this. It's been provided already. I think that was very well stated by Commissioner Rogers on where we could go with all that. But we want to. I always want both sides to win. What we want to look at here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Tom?
Yes, I'm not gonna get involved in the costs and all of that. I've got my own opinion, and they're inflated from the mayor's baseline on the cost, but, location is what I'm concerned about. Let's take a visual mental tour. Parker Street, Pie Center, 25th Street, where Parker intersects. You've got a convenience store there. To the rear of that convenience store, I don't believe that area is used presently for parking. But if we're talking 130, 150 feet, I think it might be there, and that would be, to me, a more suitable location. I think the school system probably owns the property. Mayor knows more about it than I do, but reaction time is critical. You never know when that one time in 2 years that they move out is to save someone's life. That's all I have.
If I could add on that, and I have to tell you from memory, because that was one of the early ones, and I did forget to mention that, I'm glad you did. When it was still under construction, the Pie Center, they were contacted, and we asked, we said, we need the corner behind the store on 25th Street as a future location for this building. And at that time, and I may use the wrong terminology because it's been 3 years, that time I was told, no, we have plans. They had no interest in saving us a corner there to use. That may be different today, I don't know, but that's why we didn't proceed with it. And as a matter of fact, I had forgotten about it because of that, but that was one of the first places we looked at.
Cindy?
So, Mayor, today you're looking from this committee a recommendation either to proceed or not proceed. Is that correct?
To proceed with this idea, or to proceed with not doing this, giving them a sale price that's been recommended. If that's the majority view, then I need to know that. I don't want to continue more than 3 years into a project if I'm going down a different road. I've been on all 3 roads, and I'm willing to pursue whichever one you all want. I want to say one thing, though. I'm not representing the city, but some like you all, I've got constituents in the city, too. I want to be cooperative with them. They have plans for that downtown area. I could make fun of it if I wanted to. It's not my plans. But if their plans involve us moving, then I'm willing to go through that if they're willing to pay the cost to move. That's where our attitude has always been from my point of view. I'm not part of their plans, but if it helps them with their plans and they pay for that move, then okay, we can do it. I'll be in a new building at the end of the day with less square footage, but a new building, and I've cooperated with their plans. So I'm not part of their plans, but I'm trying to be cooperative also.
Okay. I just was checking for clarification because we've had discussion for over an hour now, and I just wanted to check for clarification as to what your expectation was today.
I just want direction of how you want me to proceed, either this route that's been proposed or some other route.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. What I'd like to do is, let's, first of all, before I ask for a motion, I would like to find out the location. Are we satisfied with Minnesota Road or whatever? And if we are, that's going to be part of the equation when it comes to building a building. So that's what I would like to do is find out first if we're interested in Minnesota Road or some other location. Do we need that in the motion? Well, is Minnesota Road okay to make a recommendation to the commission?
I think the motion probably is
Okay, I've got a motion prepared here, and we'll read it. If you don't like it, we'll change it, you know. But anyway, what we probably, it sounds to me like that the bid is not high enough. We don't have enough square footage, and we need to come up with what type of square foot we need, or what we can live with. And at that point, then I would like for a motion to come from a motion to recommend to the full commission to authorize the county mayor to continue negotiation with the city and come back with a contract that the city commission and the city council, the county commission and the city council can support. Okay, I got a motion for that. Okay.
Chief, I have one question for you, and it's simple. What I'd like you to do for this committee anyway, and for the mayor in the end, is figure out all the equipment that you have and find out what size building we actually need. I think that would be the first step to make moving towards that, because obviously the 8,000 or right at 9, whatever, is too small. I want to know what we can fit comfortably in there and still you be able to work. If you can get that to us in a fairly timely manner, I'd really appreciate it.
Okay, we've got a motion on the floor in second, but do we need the square footage that we're looking for as that we want the mayor to negotiate?
I think so.
We need a square footage in this motion to support the motion. Louis?
I'd say you're getting the cart before the horse. I think we need to sit down and decide whether we want the mayor to continue negotiating with a contract where the city builds our building, or we ask the mayor to go back with the city and say, hey, this is what we'll take for our building, and let it be at that. And when we get whatever, if they're willing to pay our price, then we build our own building and our own square footage, and we do everything ourselves. I don't understand why we keep wanting the city to build us a building.
Actually, that's what we're going to authorize the county mayor to continue negotiation with the city and come back with a contract or whatever. And when I say contract, that's what negotiation he can come up with back to the commission where the city council and the commission can support. So that was a motion, and we got a second on
it. If I could say one thing, what I'm taking away in addition to your motion on the square footage is to continue to negotiate with more square footage in the picture, and that's fine. I think that's the direction you're given.
Commissioner Alford, I agree with you. Honestly, I don't plan on supporting this motion. I seconded just to vote against it. I personally feel that we'll never get what we have already. That's just how I feel about it. I think that it's just not going to work out to our favor on this at all. We're in a perfect location. We're in our own building. We have everything we need. It's not us wanting this building gone. It's them wanting it. The only reason I asked for the chief to come up with a size is basically to give the mayor something that if this does pass and he gets to negotiate, then he knows where to negotiate from. That was the only reason I asked for this. So.
Okay, yes, Josh.
Can I just have some clarity on this motion, if you don't mind? Because it was kind of vague. So I just want to make sure that what we're voting on is allowing the mayor to go into an authorization to negotiate either selling this building to them for a full price offer, or like Commissioner Alford has mentioned, or it is letting them buy it through this and negotiate bigger square foot, also more money? Because I think they offered $50,000, which if we're having to build out the inside is nowhere close to what we would need for that. So that takes everything into that consideration. Is that correct? Pretty vague. So
One more question.
Yes,
Hey, Mayor,
that's the motion.
Mayor, can the city actually build this building cheaper than we can?
I don't know. I just
It
know
may.
what my
I'm
estimates
just,
are. That motion is basically telling me to continue to negotiate more square footage and the interior to be addressed.
okay.
If that passes, my suggestion is if you want to pursue two angles, which I think we already have, but the only way you're gonna get anywhere on the selling for this an amount that you quoted some other elected official giving somebody is to pay somebody to go give you an appraisal on the building. Because keep in mind, if you were buying a building, you're gonna want an appraisal before you pay $1 million or $2 million's been mentioned. Before you pay $2 million for a building, you're gonna want an appraisal. So if you're gonna go down the road of selling it for $2 million or whatever amount, you guys need to look at getting an appraisal on it. And I'm not talking about a tax appraisal. I'm talking about an appraisal, which should be higher than a tax appraisal even. I've not done that. I've stuck with the amount of what my estimates are to build a building. You give me the money to build the building, and I could not get there. But if you really want to pursue selling it and say, take it or leave it, here's what we'll take for it based on our appraisal, okay, but you need to get that appraisal done.
Louis?
If you look at the building that backs up to the fire building, it was appraised at $1.2 million. That's half the size of our building. So if you want to get an appraisal, I would think the appraisal would be at least that much or more, because it's twice the size of the building. So we can get an appraisal, but if you look at the building that butts up against it, was $1.2 million just from Stanley, and he's always underestimating the cost of something. So we can get an appraisal, but I guarantee it's gonna be $1.5 million or more.
Isn't this part of the negotiations you would be doing with the city, where you'd be saying, this amount is too, we're saying this amount is too low? What will you increase?
Well, with them building the building, I'm not even talking about cost because it's on them. If you want to go down the road of selling the building, with the understanding we've already been there, to go further with that, to get $1.5 million or whatever that magical number is, I need an appraisal. That building next door wasn't 1.5 million before they spent $1 million on it, and this building hasn't had money spent on it. I don't know what it's worth. I just said I was from the point of view of here's what it costs to build a new building based on my estimates I obtained. But if you really just want to sell it, the only way you're going to have an arguing point of view is to have an appraisal in your hand telling the city what it's worth, if that's the route you want to go.
I agree. I agree.
So
I think we agree
continue
with that.
negotiating for them to build a building and at the same time get an appraisal in case they would rather just buy our building.
But they don't want our building. They want the property. They want to eventually build what they want to build with this city.
Not necessarily. I can't speak for them, but no, that's.
Well, I'm saying the property value of that, and that's what Louis said, but I think that's what this motion gives you the opportunity to do.
Except you need to mention the part about and get an appraisal to be paid out of $599 to have a negotiating.
Mr. Chairman.
I need that tool to negotiate.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a substitute motion on this motion to add, to allow the mayor to get an appraisal on this building. And also, if you don't mind, I'd also like to know what it costs to renovate it ourselves, and know if it's going to cost us $200,000 to fix all the issues. Do you have that information, Mayor, by chance?
No, when you when you brought it to the world's attention about the flaw in the southern side of the building, they proceeded to get an estimate to fix that, and it was explained that you're going to have hire an engineer to get that done, and that never was done. But there's going to be some costs there to get that too. I can get an estimate on the roof, but that other issue was needing an engineer's involvement, and so you would have to go down that route if you want to get that. It's not as simple as calling up we called a reputable contractor, and they said, you're gonna have to get this done first. Does that make sense?
That would be my substitute motion, is
Would you quote your substitute motion?
quote it. My substitute motion is to allow the mayor also to be able to get the engineer for the remodel, but also for the, what's it called?
Appraisal.
The appraisal. Thank you.
And get the appraisal.
And be able, and also get the appraisal done on the building, so we know if it's 750 or if it's 1.5 million or if it's $10 million building, but at least we'll know exactly what it is, so mayor can go to bat and fight for the county to be able to get all we can for it.
Now, can I get a second on that, and then we'll go to discussion?
Second.
Okay, we got a second by Mike. What discussion?
Just a point of discussion, he keeps saying building, I think we need to make sure the building and the property because that's a huge parking lot.
Yes.
We need the whole facility, not
Yes.
just the building appraised.
The only thing I suggest is, like I mentioned just a minute ago, and the appraisal would be property and building, I would assume. Tell where the appraisal and the engineering fees are to be paid from, because I don't have it in mind.
$599 out of $599.
I just got a comment on the appraisal end of it. I do have a little experience in the past. An appraisal on a commercial property like that's going to be $2,000 to $3,000, not no $200 or $300. The appraiser is going to be obligated by ethics to point out all the issues on deferred maintenance, roof, wall, engineering, and probably depreciation of the building, which will bring it down to probably zero on the building. And then you're dealing with the land. The land does have significant value, but just keep all this in mind when you're talking about this. An appraiser ethically has to show the whole story, and they certainly will. The ones they have locally, I can assure you, will. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
And to add to that, without that appraisal, we've already been there and done that. We've had those negotiations, we've had those arguments, you might say. That's why they came back with the comps. There's more variables there. And Tom didn't say this, but you're going to get some negatives in that appraisal also. Without an appraisal coming in at 1.5 million, you're nowhere near that with a sale. I can tell you that. The appraisal may come back and say the property's worth that. But we, other than having that appraisal, we've already had those discussions, and lots of them, and we could not get anywhere close. So that's why, if you want to proceed down that road, you've got to include the appraisal, with the understanding you're going to get more back than you want to get back sometimes with that appraisal. But you're also going to need to proceed with the engineer thing if you want to go down that road. And I didn't want to, because I didn't want to address fixing it if I could possibly sell or trade it. So that's why we didn't proceed with that, plus the 599.
Okay, we got a substitute motion and a second on the floor. Is there any more discussion? Lori, would you read the motion, please?
Yes. in the order that he needs it to be. So he wants to do the appraisal first and get that done and then go negotiate, then great. If not, we want to go and do renovations and all that later on, then he has that approval to be able to get with the engineer at a later date. So, don't have to do it all today.
Call the roll. Brady,
Yes.
Collins,
Yes.
Mike Hughes,
No.
Josh Rogers,
Yes.
yes.
The rest of us,
Call for fire also.
you hold the rest too. I'm,
Yeah.
and I'm on.
Wasn't the fire committee vote? No,
Fire
just building and land.
Yeah, all-
Okay.
Let her call the roll.
Call the roll.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Okay. We got that over with. Next thing we got is communications.
Was that a vote for my substitute? And then you have to revote for the whole? No, good.
No,
Okay.
it's fine.
Okay. Next on agenda, communications from the audience. Anybody want to speak? That banner too. Okay, we're adjourned. I guess that's long enough. It's yours.
No.